How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Gimel. Where am I? Okay. Daf Gimel. What did I get up to? Oh, okay. Daf Gimel. Masechta BavaKama. Friends. No, BavaMetzia. Wait, what am I doing here? Okay, no. Alright, noise cancelled. Okay, what am I doing here? Daf Gimel, Masechta BavaMetzia. Oh my gosh. Cheve, how's BavaMetzia going? BavaMetzia is something. It's great. It's great. I feel like if BavaKama was the big leagues, BavaMetzia is the big leagues. Alright. Yeah, what are we even talking about? Shnaim oiches and betalis. Not poshut stuff, huh? Okay. Shnaim oiches and betalis. It's great though. It's going to be great. Cheve, I'm telling you. It's going to be great. It's going to change your life. It's going to change your life, BavaMetzia. It's going to change your life. I think we have a bunch of work to do on Daf Beis and with Beis, and I don't even know what we're going to get to because there isn't really a good stopping point. So maybe we'll get to the top of Dalet. I don't know. We'll see. How much time do I have? Okay, I have enough time. Alright, here we go. Wow, so what are we even talking about? We're talking about Shnaim Oiches and Betalis. Okay. Who could tell me what that means? It's not really clear. I don't really know what it means. It's like, I don't know. It's complicated. Like, I don't know. I don't know. It's like, Shimon and Reuven are both fighting over a talis. Each one says it's theirs. Each one says it belongs to them. Each one says it's mine. Shimon says it's all mine. Reuven says it's all mine. And then what happens is they both swear that they each at least own at least half, and then they each get half. That's like the thing. And then it just gets really complicated because we're like trying to imply all sorts of things and figure out all sorts of things. So we're starting out on that base, but there's great sugyas. It's just like one incredible sugya right after the next. It's like we're talking about modib and miktsas ataina. That's going to come up some more over here. Like modib and miktsas, that's such a big sugya. If we get up to the sugya of Halach, like tomorrow or something, this is just great stuff. Complicated stuff, but great stuff. Let's go weiter. So we're going to start on that Beis and Beis, honestly about halfway through the Amud. Mastis in the Loki, Sumchis. Does everybody remember Sumchis? Sumchis, we had this scenario in Masechta BavaKama that you have Shimon, his ox, kills Reuven's cow. And next to Reuven's dead cow's carcass is a little baby dead cow carcass. And the question is, was that baby born yet at the time that the mother was killed? If the baby was already born, well then Shimon's not responsible to pay. If the baby was not yet born, well then it died on account of the goring, in which case Shimon is responsible to pay. So we don't know. So Sumchis said, okay, so the rabbis say over there, Hamutzi Mechaver Olav Araya. If Reuven is looking to extract payment from Shimon for the fetus, he has to prove that the fetus was not yet born at the time of the goring. Sumchis disagrees, and he says that they split it, right? Momin, what was it? Momin, something besafik cholkin, right? Momin, besafik, momin, I don't know, I'll probably see in a second. Momin amuto besafik cholkin, I think is what it is. Momin amuto besafik cholkin, right? That you divide it below shvur, without a shvur. So now what's different in our case over here in our Mishnah, by Shnaim Oiches and Betalis, is that it's dafka b'shvur, right? So that they each swear that they own no less than 50% of the talis, and then they get half. Sumchis says that they split it in half, but there would be no shvur. So, let's say that our Mishnah is unlike Sumchis, because if it was Sumchis, there you go, below shvur. That Sumchis says that when you have Momen Amutu B'Sofik, that when you're not sure, so you split it without a shvua. And our Mishnah prescribes a shvua. Ve'lamai rabon. Okay, so 1 second. So people, 1 second. If you're saying that it's not sumchis, then who is it? Is it like the rabbis? But the rabbi's position over there was that if you want to extract payment from somebody, you have to bring a proof. We're not saying here that anybody needs to prove anything. We're saying that they swear and they split it. So Rabbonon. Okay, so I'll have an easier time explaining how this could be the Rabbonon. I'll have an easier time explaining how this can be the Rabbonon. That our Mishnah can be like the Rabbonon. Hosum de lutafse tarvayu. So in the case of the cows and the fetus, they aren't both grabbing anything. It's more, distance. Like, basically in that scenario, what happens? Shimon's ox killed Reuven's cow. If Reuven wants to extract payment from Shimon, he's gonna have to prove it. He's not holding on to anything right now. He's trying to make a claim for damages. So therefore, if Reuven wants Shimon to pay him, so he has to bring proof. But over here, where they're both grabbing onto the same talis, they're both holding on to the same thing, they're both in somewhat of possession of it. So in that case, they split it. They swear and they split. Okay, so I can understand why the rabbis would say over there. I can argue that our Mishnah is like the rabbis, and I can explain why by the cows the rabbis would say Amotzi mechaver olav arayah, and why over here they would say split it with the shvuah. Eloi omar sumchis. But if you say that it's sumchis, now if I'm not mistaken, I don't really understand the logic for the next few lines. Okay. Sorry. Hashda umahosom delo tafse tarvayu cholkin below shvua. Well, if in that case, by the cows, where they aren't both holding on to anything, and therefore maybe the point is that if they aren't both holding on to anything, maybe there's more reason to assume that like they might just be making a false claim, and yet cholkin below shvua, there is no shvua. Over here, where they're both holding on to it, and I guess that there is a more valid claim to be made, and yet lo kol shekain. Oh wait, no. Yeah, exactly. Then certainly I would say that sumchis over here should not require a shvua, or would not require a shvua. And our Mishnah is requiring a shvua. So I would say that certainly sumchis would not require a shvua here, and therefore our Mishnah cannot be, it's difficult to say that our Mishnah would be like sumchis. Afilu tema sumchis, you can even say that our Mishnah is like sumchis ki omar, sumchis, that when sumchis says that there is no shvua, when sumchis says that there's no shvua, is shema v'shema, is when there are two suffix, right? Keilu, by the two cows, right? Shimon's ox scores Reuven's cow to death, and then there's the fetus. The mamish, neither one knows, was the baby born beforehand or afterwards? Nobody knows. Shimon doesn't know, Reuven doesn't know. Shimon's claiming that, well, maybe it was born afterwards, and therefore I'm not responsible. Reuven says maybe it was born fakert. Shimon says maybe he was born beforehand and I'm not responsible. Reuven says maybe he was born afterwards and you are responsible. They don't know. So in that case there's a shvuah. Aval bori uvari lo omar. But by bori and bori, when they're both, right, Reuven's saying it's my talis and Shimon's saying it's my talis, in that case sumchis would say that there would not be a shvuah. Why? I don't know, maybe because they're both certain. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. Okay. L'Rabba bar Rav Huna de Omar Sumchis Afilu Bori Uvori. Now, according to Rabba bar Rav Huna, who says that Sumchis would say that even by Bori and Bori there's no Shvuah, well then how can you explain that the Mishnah is like Sumchis? So Afilu Tema Sumchis, you can still say that the Mishnah is Sumchis ki Omar Sumchis, that when Sumchis says that there's no Shvuah, Heicha de'ika drore de mamona, that Sumchis would say that there's no Shvuah when there is a loss of money. Okay? So, meaning, in the case of the cows, so people are going to lose money, right? Either Shimon's going to have to pay and he loses money, or Shimon's not going to have to pay and Reuven loses out on money, right? Loses the money for the calf. So Aval, right? So in that case, we don't need to swear, because let's just go back for a second. Aval heicha deleka duar de mamona, but where there's no loss of money. For example, in our case, where they both find this talus and they're both arguing that it belongs to them, both stand to gain but not to lose anything, right? Like, before they had nothing, now they might have a talus. If they argue hard enough, they can maybe get a talus. So over here, there's no loss of money, so therefore Sumchis would say that there would be a requirement to swear, since it's, we have to be concerned about a ramai, we have to be concerned that somebody's going to be dishonest over here, and just try to make a claim that it belongs to them. And nobody's actually losing money, so therefore you have to swear that you're telling the truth. Okay. Vilav kalva chomer hu, but is it not a kalva chomer? Okay, so it's saying, is it not a kalva chomer to say that in this case there shouldn't have to be a shvuah? Okay, and it's like pretty confusing. I don't really understand the logic, honestly. Vilav kalva chomer uma hasam deika dvar de mamona. So when it comes to the ox and the cow, where there's a loss of money to each, right? That each one stands to lose money. Either Shimon has to pay money to Reuven, or Reuven has to forfeit the value of the fetus. Now, objectively, the value of this fetus either belongs to Shimon or it belongs to Reuven, right? Meaning either it was born beforehand or it wasn't beforehand. There's no splitting over here. It's an objective kind of thing. And Sumchis says over there that this money that we're uncertain about, you split without a shvuah. But over here, where there's no loss of money, it's just a missed opportunity for potential gain. And we could say that it potentially belongs to both of them, like if they picked it up at the same time, for example. So then certainly they should just be able to split it. I think maybe the point is, like, if in the first case where objectively it belongs to either one or the other, it can't belong to both of them, right? Either the baby was born beforehand or not, right? Either it's shaykh to Reuven or to Shimon. Like, either Shimon has to pay for it or not. And yet we're saying split it. Well, over here, where it could potentially belong to both of them, certainly Sumchis should say to split it without a shvuah. So if you take Sumchis, you can even say that Mishnah Sumchis shvuah zo midraboni k'Rabbi Yochanan. Well, you could say it's like Sumchis that, look, technically, yeah, you're right. Sumchis would say that you should be able to just split it without a shvuah. However, over here there's an added layer, which is like Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan, shvuah zo takonis chachomim he, that this shvuah is a takonis chachomim. That here, this shvuah is davke a takonis chachomim, that they enacted it so that, because this is a scenario that is just too easy, right? You see a talus there and like, holy cow, why should he get the talus? I want the talus. So you go and you make a claim for it. Why not? You have nothing to lose. Nobody has anything to lose. Okay, so maybe he won't gain the full talus. He'll gain half the talus. He's still better off. Then, Reuben could say, hey, okay, so maybe Shimon won't get the whole talus. He'll get part of the talus, but I'll get part of the talus too. It's too easy for him to just, place himself in the mix dishonestly. So therefore the rabbis enacted a shvuah here in order to prevent dishonesty. So really you could say that Sumchus would say Me'ikra Adin, here also by Shnayim Ochsim Metalis, they would divide without a shvuah. The shvuah is only a din d'Rabbanan that they said, look, we want to prevent a scenario where it'll be too easy to be dishonest and to be tricky and to sneaky and lie and a shtunk and a shmendrik and all that stuff. Okay. Fine. Limim Masis and Rabbi Yossi. Okay, next. Let's say that the Mishnah is unlike Rabbi Yossi. Why? What does Rabbi Yossi say? Dik Rabbi Yossi, ha'omar. Because Rabbi Yossi says, Im kein mahifsid ramoy, ela hakol yehimunich at yovo Eliyahu. Who can tell me what this scenario is talking about? Anybody? This scenario is talking about an interesting scenario. The scenario is that Reuven and Shimon both left money, deposited money by, Levi, okay? Reuven, or let's say this, one of them, should we assign names? Sure. Let's assign names. Reuven deposited $100. Shimon deposited $200. Okay. Comes collection day, and guess what both of them do? They both claim that they're the one who deposited $200. Very, very sneaky there, Reuven. Reuven only deposited $100, but he's claiming that his is the $200. So the Chachamim say, look, at the end of the day, let's just give everybody the lowest common denominator. We don't know, obviously if we knew that Reuven was the one who deposited $100, we would only give him the $100, right? But we don't know whether it was Reuven or Shimon who deposited the $100. So the Chacham say, look, the lowest common denominator over here is $100, right? Reuven had deposited $100. Shimon had deposited $200. But, okay, let's at least give both of them $100. Reuven will get back his $100. Shimon will at least get $100 of his $200. And in terms of the second $100, we'll set that aside until Eliyahu Hanovi Zocher Latov comes and he'll tell us if the $100 belongs to Reuven or to Shimon. Rabbi Yossi says, no way. Because you're like kind of like rewarding Reuven in that sense, right? Meaning, Reuven has absolutely nothing to, if Reuven is that kind of a person, then you're just making it too easy for him to be that kind of a person. Now basically, Reuven knows that he's the one who deposited $100. All he has to say is that his is the one that's $200. He knows that he'll still get his $100 back, which is, what he deposited anyway, so he's not losing anything. And like this, he's making Shimon lose out. How can we reward Reuven by giving him back, he gets back his $100 and he makes Shimon lose out on $100 without any loss to himself? That's not, so Rabbi Yossi's not into that. And therefore Rabbi Yossi says, nobody gets anything. Because if Reuven realizes, wait, my being tricky means I'm losing out on my own money. I'm not going to, right? I deposited $100. I'm not even getting that back. He'll say, you know what? Forget it. I'm the one who deposited $100. Give me back my $100. Shimon gets his $200. So as a sort of incentive for Reuven to not be tricky, we say, if you're going to be tricky and claim the $200, nobody's going to get anything. And therefore, hopefully Reuven will say to himself, well, I'd rather get back my $100. I'm just going to say that mine is the $100 and we'll move on. So let's say that our Mishnah is unlike Rabbi Yossi. Dik Rabbi Yossi, Because if it's Rabbi Yossi, Ha'omer, Rabbi Yossi says, Im kain, mahifsid ramoy. If so, then what does the, what should we call a ramoy? A sneaky fellow. If so, then what is the sneaky, no, not sneaky, tricky. The trickster, the swindler, the trickster. Im kain mahifsid ramoy. If you give them both $100, then what does the trickster lose out? He doesn't lose anything. So rather the whole thing, all of the money, we just wait until Eliyahu Hanavi comes, and Eliyahu Hanavi will say, Ruvain gets 100, Shimon gets 200, and then we'll divide it up at that point. Now, therefore, in our case, how could it be, right? How could it be that we're saying just split it between the two? Then the trickster doesn't lose anything. He gets half the talis. If it was Rabbi Yossi, I would think that he would say that, I would think the halacha would be that let's set aside the talis, and when Eliyahu Hanavi comes and says who it belongs to, we'll give it to that person. Ela my Rabbon. So if it's not Rabbi Yossi, then who is it? The Rabbanon. Given the Amri Rabbanon, Hashar Yemunich At Yovo Eliyahu, since the rabbis say that the remainder needs to wait until Eliyahu Hanavi comes, right? Since the rabbis say, what do the rabbis say? The rabbis say, well, since both Reuven and Shimon deposited at least $100, so each one gets $100, and then the remainder that we don't know about, each one is claiming that the second $100, that the remaining $100 belongs to them. Well, we say in that case, we don't split it. We put it aside and we wait. So Hanami, so Shnei Moichsim Betalis, Kishar Demei, Disveka Hi. Well, the Shnei Moichsim Betalis, where they're both claiming it, should essentially be like the outstanding $100. And by the outstanding $100, the Chachamim say, put it aside until Eliyahu Hanavi comes. So shouldn't they say the same thing by Shnei Moichsim Betalis? That it should be set aside until Eliyahu Hanavi comes? So Hamai Iyom Bishlome Rabbonon. Okay, but I cannot explain how our Mishnah is like the Rabbonon. Because Hosom Devadai Hai Mono Dechad Minai Hu. Well, because when it comes to the $100 and the $200, so after we've paid out $100 to Reuven and to Shimon respectively, and there's the remaining $100, that remaining $100 either belongs to Reuven or to Shimon. It certainly does not belong to both. Therefore, we say we're going to put it aside until Eliyahu Hanavi comes. So Amir Rabbanon Yehimunach Ad Sheyavo Eliyahu. So therefore, the Chacham say wait until Eliyahu Hanavi comes. Hacha, but by Shnei Moichsim Betalis, the Iko the Meimar the Tarvayu that it could possibly belong to both of them, that they both picked it up, punkt at the same time. So it belongs to both of them. So Amir Rabbanon Palge B'Shavuot. So the rabbis would say over here that they split it with the Shavuos. I can explain how Shnei Moichsim Betalis is like the rabbis. But if you say that if you want to try to argue, to explain the Mishnah like Rabbi Yossi, Hashta Uma Hosom, Tibivadai Ika Mona Lemar, Vika Mona Lemar, Rabbi Yossi Emunach At Yovaliyahu. Well, if in the case of the $100 and the $200, where we know for sure that at least $100 belongs to Reuven and 100 belongs to Shimon, respectively, and yet we say, nope, nobody gets anything. You all have to wait until Eliyahu Hanavi comes. Over here, the Kalamemer, where we could possibly argue that maybe it might only belong to one of them and the other one's being a trickster. Lo kol shekain, certainly then I would say that according to Rabbi Yossi, which should wait until Eliyahu Navi comes. Afilu tema Rabbi Yossi. You can even explain, where am I? Afilu tema Rabbi Yossi. You can even explain that our Mishnah is like Rabbi Yossi, because Hosom Vadai Ika Ramoy. Because in the case of the $100 and the $200, there is definitely a trickster. For sure, there is a trickster. One of them left $100, the other one left $200. They're both claiming it. One of them is a liar. But Hocham Yemar Dika Ramoy. But over here, who says that there is necessarily a trickster? Ema Tarvayu Ba'ade Adodi Agbahuha. You could argue that both Ruvain and Shimon picked it up at the same time. And Itaka does belong to both of them. And there's no trickster. And therefore, Rabbi Yossi could possibly say that here, they split it. That here they split it. That here they split it. Inami, alternatively, Hosum konis le Rabbi Yossi le Ramoy ki heichi tilodi. Alternatively, you can explain that how come Rabbi Yossi has his position over there by the 100 and the 200? Because he wants to exert pressure against, I was saying it's Ruvain. He wants to exert pressure against Ruvain so that he will admit it. And that pressure is that nobody's going to get anything until this gets sorted. So that Ruvain will realize that, hey, he's going to lose out on his $100. He's not going to get anything if he's going to continue to insist that, falsely, that the $200 is his. Therefore, he says nobody gets anything in order to exert pressure so that Ruvain will admit that his is the $100, so at least he could recoup that and they could move on. But over here, by Shnaim Oichsim Betalis, my Pseudo Islay Delodi. But over here, what pressure is there to convince anybody to admit anything? What does Rashi says? Right? Meaning, in this case, by Shnai Muchsim Metalis, if one of them admits, you know what, it's not mine, he gets nothing out of it. By the $100 and the $200, if Reuven says, you know what, mine is the $100, at least he'll get $100 out of it. Over here, if one of them says, you know what, it doesn't actually belong to me, he'll get nothing. So there isn't any motivation, there isn't any incentive. By saying nobody gets it, there's no incentive to admit anything. So therefore, I can explain that Rabbi Yossi would say that Rabbi Yossi could be the author of our Mishnah and acknowledge that in this scenario, it doesn't make sense to say that nobody gets anything, and therefore he says that they split it. BavaMetzia. Well, that logic is sound when it comes to a Metzia, finding something. Right? They both find this talus and they pounce on it. But what about in the scenario, right, we said it also applies to Mekach u'Memker, that if they both purchased the cloak, but one of them kind of forcibly paid the money and took it. So in that case, if we say that nobody gets anything, then there is incentive to kind of admit that you are the one who forcibly purchased it, and then at least, I imagine at least you'll get your money back or something like that. So therefore that logic by Shnai Moichsim Betalis really would only make sense, right? The incentive approach would really only make sense if we're talking about a Metzia, but not by Mekach u'Mimkar. Rather, it makes more sense like the first explanation, which is that it's possible that they both taka own it, and therefore even Rabbi Yossi would say that they split it. I think that was the first. That was the first shot. Now says the Gemara, Bein l'Rabbon Bein l'Rabbi Yossi, Hosum Gabi Chenvoni al Pinkoso. So I think this is what we ended with yesterday, right? That if you have an employer, and the employer says to, let's say some clerk or something, the employer says to this clerk, clerk, can you please pay my employees? That's what he asks the clerk. Clerk, can you please pay my employees? And he says, sure. And then obviously the employer is going to, he's paying him on credit. And then obviously the employer is going to have to then pay back the clerk for the, for the salaries that he's paying to the employees. So an employer says to a clerk, can you pay out salaries? Can you pay the payroll to my employees? And he says, sure. And then what happens is the clerk comes back to the employer. He says, okay, I paid payroll. This is how much it cost. It cost $1,000. But the thing is, the employees are claiming that they never received payroll. And therefore, they're also going to the employer and saying, hey, we didn't receive anything. So they're both making claims against the employer. So the Chacham had said that you need to, the Chacham had said that both of them swear and then they can get paid, right? So the clerk swears that the payroll was dispersed, and I think that's the right word. I don't know. That payroll was paid and he can get paid back for his money that he laid out, and the employees make a shvuah that they never received payroll, and then he has to pay both of them. So, Bein l'Rabbon and Bein l'Rav Yossi, Hosam gabi chenvoni al pinkoso. When it comes to the clerk with paying payroll for the employer, de katoni zenishba v'noto v'zenishba v'notel, that the clerk as well as the employees, everybody swears that they are owed money from the employer and then they can receive it. Mai shno delo amrinon nafke l'mamono mibalabayis ve'emunoch ad shavaliyahu. Why not say, in this case, that instead of the employer having to pay both the clerk as well as the employees, why not say one of them is definitely lying, so let's put aside the money until Eliyahu Hanavi comes. Certainly one of them is lying. It's impossible that the clerk paid payroll and also that the employees didn't receive payroll. If he paid it, they would have received it. So one of them is lying. So therefore, why don't we just put aside the money? The employer has to pay the salaries. That's of course. The question is to who? So just put it aside. When Eliyahu Hanavi comes, he'll tell us who it belongs to. So the reason over there is because each one comes with their claims. The clerk comes with his claim. The employees come with their claim. That the chenvoni, the clerk, says to the balabais, look, you asked me to pay payroll. I paid you payroll. My isli gabi sochir, I don't know your employees. Even if your employees swear to me that they did not receive payroll, lo mehemen li bishvua. I don't trust them. I don't know them. I don't trust them. They could swear from today to tomorrow. It makes no difference to me. Ate eminte lo omart li besaide havle, that I think the point is you had trusted the employees. You did not inform me that when I paid payroll, I should have done so with witnesses so that there would be no dispute. You kind of created a mess over here, Mr. Employer. You told me to pay payroll, to lay out the money. I did. You gave no indication that I should have to do this with witnesses, that I should be concerned that the employees are dishonest. So I did what you asked me to do. I paid payroll. I deserve to be reimbursed. V'socher nami, and the employees oichet omrule, I guess omrule, they say to him, the valabais, ono avdi avid togabach, look, I worked for you. My isli gabi chenvoni, I don't know who this clerk is who's claiming that he paid us. He didn't. Avagab de mishtabali lo mehemenli, even if he swears from today till tomorrow, it makes no difference. I did work for you. I deserve to get paid. Hilkoch tavayu mishtabe v'shaklim balabais. Therefore, since each one comes with his own unique claim to payment, so they swear that they are being honest, and then they can collect. Okay. Moving on. Tani Ribchia. Okay. So this is now going to take us, I think, for a while. This is going to take us now, I think, for a few daf. Yeah, this is going to take us. This is, I think, going to take us until Hayomid Beis. Interesting stuff. It relates to Modeh B'Miktsas. But from like different angles. Okay, here we go. Oh my gosh, this is probably going to be a long daf. How far are we? I think we're about 40 minutes or so in. Okay. It's probably going to be over now if I had to get. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll have to see. It's an interesting scenario. Tani Ribchia. Ribchia taught. You ready? Mona li biyodcho. Bala omer ein lecha biyodi klum. Ve'edim idin also sheyesh lo 50 zuz. Nosin lo 50 zuz v'yishava. Al hashar shelotei. Hadoas piv gedol hadoas edim. Mikal v'chomer. Wow. Wow. Okay. What's the classic case of Modeh B'Miktsas Satayne? Yishava? What's the classic case of Modeh B'Miktsas? The classic case of Modeh B'Miktsas is that Shimon says to Reuven, you owe me $100. Reuven says, I owe you $50. So we say, we don't trust that Reuven is being honest, and therefore he has to swear that he's telling the truth. He swears that all he owes is $50, and then he pays $50 to Shimon, and that's that. That's the classic case of Modeh B'Miktsas. Shimon makes a claim that Reuven owes him money. Reuven only admits to part of the funds. Now this case is an interesting case because it's like an alternative version, so to speak, of Modeh B'Miktsas, which is Shimon says to Reuven, you owe me $100. Reuven says, I don't owe you anything. So now that's what's called Kofer HaKol. Reuven is denying 100% of it. Now in that case, Midah Oraisa, by Kofer HaKol, you don't need to pay, you don't need to swear. Because, person is not going to be so chutzpahdik to, completely deny having received anything by somebody who did him a favor and lent him a loan. So if he says that he didn't, that he doesn't know what Shimon's talking about, we believe him, he doesn't have to swear. But, now what happens? Witnesses come. Now, of course, witnesses are be all end all. If witnesses come and say something, then that's what it is, right? That's the whole point of witnesses. We believe witnesses. So witnesses now come and say that actually Reuven borrowed $50 from Shimon. So the sort of this kind of Shimon is claiming 100. The witnesses are saying actually it was 50. So there's kind of this Modeh B'Miktsas-esque kind of thing. It's also an interesting scenario because both Reuven and Shimon don't seem to be telling the truth, right? Shimon saying, Reuven, you owe me $100. Reuven saying, I don't owe you anything. The witnesses are coming and actually saying, Reuven owes 50. So it's not the 100 that Shimon says, and it's not the 0 that Reuven says, but he owes 50. So we're saying in that case, Reuven obviously needs to pay the $50 because witnesses say that he owes $50. So if witnesses say he owes it, he owes it. So Reuven needs to pay the $50. And with regard to the remaining $50, he needs to swear that he doesn't owe them. Very, very interesting scenario. Very, very interesting scenario. So it's kind of like a alternative, like a backdoor kind of Modeh B'Miktsas. So Tani Ribchia, I'm reading again from the beginning. Tani Ribchia taught, Monali biyodcha. Shimon says to Reuven, you owe me $100. V'hala omer, ein lecha biyodi klum. Reuven says, I don't owe you anything. Now normally he would not have to swear if he's Kofer HaKol. But ve'edim me'idim also sheish lo 50 zuz. But now witnesses come and say, actually, Ruvain owes Shimon 50 zuz. No sein lo 50 zuz. So Ruvain has to, of course, pay Shimon 50 zuz. V'yishava al ashar, and Ruvain then needs to swear about the remaining 50 zuz. Ruvain needs to swear about the remaining 50 zuz that he does not own it, that he does not owe it. Shelo tehei odoas piv gidola me'ados edim mikal v'chomer. Wow. Because his own admittance, right, a classic case of modeh b'miktsas would be when Shimon says, Ruvain, you owe $100. Ruvain says, I only owe $50. That's a classic case of modeh b'miktsas. And in that case, Ruvain needs to swear. In this case, witnesses are the ones who are saying that Ruvain owes $50. Witnesses are of course a more significant thing than just his own saying, right? Witnesses are solid, I don't know, set in stone, whatever. When witnesses come, we trust them. Like that's like the strongest kind of thing you can get is witnesses. So it would be weird if on his own admittance, by his own telling, he has to swear, and yet when witnesses come and say that he owes $50, not right, he would not have to swear. So therefore, if when he admits that it's not 100 but it's 50, he has to swear. So when witnesses come and say it's not 100 but he does in fact owe 50, he would also have to swear that he does not owe the remaining from Kal V'chomer. And the Gemara is actually going to be sort of drilling down into what exactly is this Kal V'chomer. So that is coming up. V'tanetune shnayim oichzim betalis ze omer ani mitzosiyah v'chulei. Second, I just have to check how much time do I have left? Wow, okay. And we can get a support from our Mishnah, because if you think about our Mishnah, what is our Mishnah? Our Mishnah is Shnai Moichzim B'Talis, right? Reuven and Shimon are both vying for the talis. Shimon says, it's mine. Reuven says, no, it's not yours at all. Right? Again, Shimon saying it's all mine, right? Right? It's all mine. Right? Shimon is making that claim. Reuven is rebutting it and saying, none of it is yours. Similar to our case. Now, we are then coming and saying that actually Shimon owes 50% of it does belong to Shimon, right? Because we're saying that they each swear and then they divide it. So be'etzem, you have Shimon saying that it all belongs to him. Reuven is saying none of it belongs to him. We're now coming and basically testifying and saying that 50% of it does belong to Shimon, and we're saying to swear. So we want to bring a proof from our Mishnah to Reb Chia that in a scenario where you have Shimon claiming that you owe me $100 and Reuven is saying I don't owe you anything, and then witnesses come and say that Reuven owes $50, so we say that Reuven needs to swear. So then also so then our Mishnah is a support for that, because you have Shimon saying the talis belongs to him. Reuven is saying that none of it belongs to him. We're be'etzim testifying essentially that Shimon does own 50% of it, and we're saying that they swear, so we see that in this scenario there would be a shvuah. The tafis are the things the tafse on the side, right? So over here they're both chapping it. On the side they were testifying the tafis high didehu, that Shimon is grabbing this talis and at least half of it belongs to him, right? So we're testifying about that. The tafis high didehu, and what Reuven is grabbing, I guess at least 50% of it belongs to him. Vikatoni Yishava. So we're seeing that when we testify that half of it belongs to him, there's a shvuah. Okay, fine. Very, very, very interesting sugya. Now, my shelo tei odoas piv gidola me'ados edim mekav chomer. Uwa. Uwa. Kavachomers. You know about Kavachomers. I feel like my perspective on Kavachomers has changed a little bit since Push Through the Mush. Because you know what my perspective on Kavachomers before Push Through the Mush was like, they're really hard. But what was so hard about them is that Kavachomers, they can really put your head through a ringer, your brain through a ringer. But that's bidyuk the kind of stuff that you can push through the mush on. It's that kind of stuff when it just feels like it's too much. It's not too much. You can push through the mush. But Kavachomers are still hard. We just gotta push through the mush. Okay. Where am I? Who can tell me where I am? What? Where am I? What? Is anybody yelling? Is anybody yelling into the podcast now? 3 lines from the bottom. Okay, where am I? Okay. So my shalotehei hodas piv gedola me'adoas edim kavachomer. What does it mean that his own admittance, right, meaning a classic case of modeh b'miktsas, Shimon says, Reuven, you owe me $100. Reuven says, I owe you $50. So by his own admittance, he has to swear. That should not be more stringent than when witnesses say he owes $50, that he owes $50. So certainly in this case, he should have to swear about the remainder. Mikavachomer, from a kalvachomer. So what does that mean? So shelotomar hodoas piv hu diramyo rachmone shvue ole kide rabba. That we should not say that, look, when he himself admits it, so that is where there's a shvua like Rabba. I feel like Rabba, maybe I'm wrong here. I feel like Rabba has these like principles. You know, we're about to see, as we've seen in the past on that, like on the Kuf Zayin of Masechet Bava Kama, this principle that we're going to see now, the principle of modeh b'miktsas, this theory. There's also like Takana, what is it? Takana de Rabba? Is that it? The Takana de Rabba, right? On with the lulav on Sukkot and the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, they were concerned that maybe he's going to go to learn by the expert and he's going to carry Tal Ramos B'Shus Harab. Does he have any more? He must have. I wonder if like Rabba has these like, but these are serious principles, right? The principle of modeh b'miktsas, the principle of Takana de Rabba by shofar and lulav. These are important principles. Dama Rabba says Rabba. How come the Torah says modeh miktsas atayne yishova? How come the Torah says that by modeh b'miktsas Reuven needs to swear? Because chazaka ein adam meizponu b'fnei bal chovo. Well, you know, Shimon lent Reuven $100. He's not going to be so brazen to say that I don't owe you anything. Now, in theory, he would like to say that he doesn't owe anything. But he's not going to do that because that would just be extremely chutzpahdik and ungrateful. Now, in an ideal world, Reuven doesn't have anything against Shimon. He's appreciative. He's grateful that Shimon gave him $100. He would like to admit that he owes $100 and they would like to pay Shimon back the $100. The reason why he doesn't admit it is because he doesn't have the money right now. He's just trying to buy some time to sneak his way out of it. Let me just buy some time until I have the money. When I have the money, I'll pay back Shimon. So in the meantime, I'll just say, look, you know, I don't want to deny all of it. That would be extremely ungrateful. I'll say, how about this? You didn't lend me 100, you lent me 50, I'll pay 50 now. And then when I have another 50, I'll pay him back. So therefore the Torah says, we know what's going on in Reuven's head. We know that he's playing this game. The Torah doesn't want Reuven being dishonest like this, even though he, at least in his mind, he has good intentions. He's not telling the truth. If he borrowed $100, he needs to pay back $100. And we say, Reuven, if it's true that you really do only owe 50, that you really did only borrow 50, swear. So therefore, I might think, okay, so that is something that applies to when Reuven says on his own that he owes $50. That whole, logic and thought process. Aval ha'ados edim, but the scenario when he says that he doesn't owe anything, and then witnesses come and say that he owes 50, that's a different scenario. That there isn't this whole svara. Ema, lo. So I might think that in this scenario, there wouldn't be a shvuah. It's a different case. So kamash malon, kal v'chomer. So therefore we have this kal v'chomer to say that there is a shvuah by the witnesses. So my kal v'chomer, what is the kal v'chomer? Umapiv she'ein mechayvo momen mechayvo shvuah. Well, the kal v'chomer is, well, sorry, something's bothering me. Okay. Umapiv she'ein mechayvo momen. We're going to explain what this means in a second. But if his mouth, which is not mechayev momen, mechayvo shvuah, and yet it is mechayev shvuah, so it's kind of a more lenient case, because your mouth can't be mechayev momen, and yet it is mechayev shvuah. Edim shemechayevin also momen, witnesses who could be mechayev, right, who are being mechayev momen, right? Witnesses come and say he owes $50. He owes $50. In udin shemechayevin also shvuah, certainly they should be able to be mechayev shvuah. Ufivein mechayev momen. What do you mean that his mouth is not mechayev him money? At the end of the day, when a person admits that he owes money, so that's Kimeya Eidem. It's as if 100 witnesses would have testified that he owes money, i.e., if a person admits that he owes money, he owes money. So what do you mean that he doesn't owe any money by his own mouth? So my mom and knas. When we're talking about that it's not mechayev momen, it means a knas. That of course we know, modeh b'knas, potter. If a person says that he owes a fine, for example, that he admits that he's a ganif, so he doesn't have to pay kefil. So ma'piv she'ein mechayev knas, mechayev shvuah, if his mouth, which is not mechayev knas, and yet it's mechayev shvuah, edim shemechayevin also knas, edim who are mechayev a knas, eino din shemechayevin also shvuah, well then certainly they should be able to be mechayev a shvuah. But ma'lefiv shekin mechayev o korban. But the Gemara says, I don't know about this kal v'chomer. This kal v'chomer is predicated on the fact that his mouth is more lenient than witnesses. But actually, I can argue that his mouth is more stringent than witnesses. Ma'lefiv shekin mechayev o korban. A person can be mechayev o korban. That, for example, as we learned at the end of Masechta Bava Kama, that if a person denies that he has something and he swears that he doesn't have it, then he admits that he does have it, so he has to bring a korban asham. So shekim mechayev o korban. Tomer be'edim she'ein mechayevin also korban. But witnesses, if they come and testify that he has it, he wouldn't be chayev a korban. He wouldn't be chayev a korban. So we see that his own admittance is more stringent in a sense, right? His own mouth is more stringent in a sense than Edim, and therefore I can understand why maybe by his own mouth he would have to swear, but not by witnesses. Halokasha. That's no question, because Reb Chia Reb Meir is spherele. Reb Chia actually holds like Reb Meir, who said that Edim can be mechayev a korban, and therefore your mouth is not more stringent, than Edim in that sense. The Reb Chia Reb Meir spherele the Amar, who says Edim mechayev and also korban, that witnesses can be mechayev korban just like his own mouth. Mikal v'chomer, from a kal v'chomer titnan, that we learn in Mishnah Amrulo, Shnai mochal techelev. If two people say to Reuven, you ate chelev, right? Two witnesses say you ate chaylev. V'omer lo achalti. And he says, no, I didn't. They say you ate chaylev. He says, no, I didn't. Reb Meir mechayev. So Reb Meir says that he's chayev to bring a korban for eating chaylev b'shogeg. The Chacham potu. The Chacham say that he is potter. He doesn't have to bring a korban. Amar Reb Meir says, "Mevi'u shnaim lidei misa chamur lo yivi'u lidei korban akal." Well, if two witnesses can testify about a person in a capital case to be mechayevim misa, certainly they can testify to be mechayevim a korban for eating chaylev. Right? Lidei korban akal. Amrulo. They said to Reb Meir, "Ma'im yirtze lomar mezid hayiti di potter." But the Chachamim respond and say that no, he's potter because after all, if he was lying, he could have said that he ate it b'mezid, right? Meaning these witnesses are testifying about him that he ate chaylev b'shogeg. Now, if he wanted to get out of bringing a korban, he could have just said, "Yeah, I did eat chaylev, but actually I ate it b'mezid." So they're testifying that he ate chaylev, and he's admitting that he ate chaylev, but if he says that he ate it b'mezid, well then he's chayiv kares, he doesn't bring a korban chatas. So from the fact that he didn't say that to get out of the korban, and instead he denies having eaten the chaylev, so he's going to be potter from a korban. So we're saying that Reb Chia holds like the Chachamim Reb Chia holds like Reb Meir that actually Eidim can be mechayev a korban. So if that's the case, then we wanted to say, well, actually Piv is more stringent than Eidim because Piv can be mechayev a korban, Eidim can't. Actually, that's not a good avenue because Eidim can also be mechayev a korban. El malefiv shekin mechayev oshum. Okay, but his mouth could be mechayev in oshum. Oshum anu korban, yeah, but oshum is a korban, and we said that the chacham that Eidim can be mechayev a korban. El malefiv shekin mechayev a chomesh. Okay, but if a fellow swears that he did not steal something, then he admits that he stole it. So he's chayev a chomesh. But if witnesses testify, then they will not be mechayev a chomesh. Halo kasha, that's no question. Reb Chia Reb Meir Svirle, that Reb Chia holds again, like Reb Meir ki echid mechayev le korban mikal v'chomer, just like Eidim can be mechayev a korban from mikal v'chomer, that if they could be mechayev misa, they could be mechayev a korban. Well, then mechayev le chomesh mikal v'chomer. Well, then if they could be mechayev misa, they could be mechayev a chomesh as well. Alamalefiv shekein eino be'akchoshu ve'azoma. But a person's own testimony about himself cannot be contradicted or hazamad, right? Meaning, if a fellow says, yes, I owe, Reuven says, yes, I owe Shimon $100. Witnesses then come and say, no, you don't owe him $100. Hodas ba'adin k'mei edim dami. Well, if he says that he owes the money. No testimony can contradict him, or even if they say edim imanu ayisim malkum ploni, it's irrelevant. His own testimony about himself cannot be undone. But regular testimony could be, undone with hakosha or with hazam. So therefore, his own admittance, his own mouth is actually more stringent than the witnesses. Okay, so rather, the Kal V'chomer is not by comparing his mouth to the witnesses to say that, well, his mouth is more lenient and the witnesses are more stringent, and if by his mouth there's a shvuah, then certainly by witnesses there's a shvuah. That is not the Kal V'chomer, because we can argue that his mouth is actually more stringent than the witnesses. So El Asmi Eid Echod. Rather, the Kal V'chomer is coming from Eid Echod. Uma Eid Echod she'ein mechayvo momin. Should I stop here actually? Maybe I should take a stop here. I think I should actually stop here. I'm going to stop here. I think I'm going to take a stop here. I think I'm going to take a stop here. A, because it's been a long time. I think we're over an hour already. And B, because there's no good stopping point for a while, and we're like in the middle of a Kal V'chomer here, kind of, and this is like a whole new avenue to it, and I think it just makes sense to stop here. BavaMetzia, it's the big leagues. The big leagues. We're like, just like not like good stopping places. So like, we like kind of stopped in the middle yesterday of like trying to figure out who our Mishnah is unlike. We tried to say that it was, yesterday we said it's unlike Bananas. Now we said it's unlike Sumchus. And then we tried to say that it's unlike Rabbi Yossi. Then we got to this really interesting new sugya of kind of this Modeh b'miktsas-esque type of thing with witnesses and Shnai Melichs and Bitalis, and we're going to get into all sorts of interesting stuff. I hope you're managing. Peace out.